Welcome to Leadership Matters, a podcast from the Bailey Group. I'm your host, Kaylee Thomsen, president of and partner at the Bailey Group, where we believe better leaders create healthier workplace environments, healthier humans, and a better world. On this show, we explore real stories, practical insights, and honest conversations to help you lead yourself and others better. Thanks for joining us. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Leadership Matters. I'm your host, Kaylee Thomsen, and today I'm joined by Sally Cornet. Sally is a global HR executive, an executive coach, and keynote speaker, and also a master practitioner of neuro-linguistics programming. Sally, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. I would love to dive into your expertise around neuro-linguistics, Sally. First of all, for those of us unfamiliar with the practice, explain to us what NLP is, and I'd love to then learn about how you were really drawn to the world of NLP.
Yeah. Thank you so much for asking. It's really an amazing science. And it really is just about the science of the mind and the language that we use within our minds, and the way that impacts our behavior on a regular basis. So when you think about it, and most people don't even realize this, but 90% of your brain is the subconscious or the unconscious. I call it the unconscious. A lot of people call it subconscious. 90%.
Wow.
90%. So only 10% of your brain, what you have going on cognitively at any point in time, is conscious. And people don't realize that. So when you think about, you ever had that situation where you get in your car to drive to work and you show up in the parking lot and you stop and you're like, oh, wow, wait a minute. I don't even remember driving here.
Yeah.
It's because your unconscious mind knows how to do that. And you've programmed it over years and years of repetition, driving to the same place. So the cool thing about it is that it frees you up to think about other things. You don't have to think about, okay, I put my blinker on, I turn left, I do, whatever. It's much more productive, really. And it's a great way that your mind does things for you automatically without thinking about it. So that's the cool thing about the unconscious mind. But sometimes it gets stuck in some kind of loop and we don't even really know or understand why. And because of that, sometimes it impacts behavior or attitudes or beliefs in a way that maybe are helpful to us and maybe they're not helpful to us. So understanding the science of that and how it all works together helps people make changes, real lasting, meaningful changes. So I got interested in NLP. You asked about kind of the genesis of it. My career in HR, and specifically in HR leadership, lands you more often than not coaching people and helping people and watching people's growth and progress through their careers. And particularly the last few years, I've been a certified executive coach and I've been working more with very, very senior level leaders, I've noticed that people tend to get stuck at a certain level or a certain place in their career. And they struggle. And usually it's the really, really, really high performers that are perfectionists. They're really, really good at what they do. And they know their stuff. They know it. They know the content. They know it intellectually. But they struggle being able to move forward because they struggle with influencing people around them. So I noticed it for year after year after year. And a couple of years ago, I was just looking at some data, particularly around HR, because that's where I've spent most of my life. Looking at some data about HR's level of influence and how really we're flatlined basically as a function on our ability to impact organizational strategy. So the organizations, 48% of the world, really 52% of the world does not see HR as a strategic contributor to their organization.
Wow.
And it is flatlined. So I thought, why? What has happened? We're really smart people. We've done a lot over the last few years to teach people things at how to do data analytics, as an example, how to show up, how to make a strategy, how to run an HR program. But we've neglected those patterns, and sometimes the confidence level, sometimes the way we show up, and the way we communicate. So I just started doing some research and stumbled upon NLP, quite frankly. Had never heard of it, stumbled upon it, started reading it, and thought, oh, I just got to get certified. So here I am.
Going through that certification process, Sally, in what ways did your knowledge of neurolinguistics programming change you and how you operate?
Yeah. So I was telling you earlier, if you're going to study NLP, you need to be ready to go on a little bit of your own personal journey as well. So I kind of started out thinking, well, I'm doing this so that I can help the people that I coach and the people that I work with. And then as soon as I started really digging into it, I thought, oh, okay, I've got some of my own stuff to work on. I would tell you that specifically for me, it has helped me become a better listener. It's helped me become a better leader,
Mm.
just a better person in general. I'm a better wife, better mother, better friend, better daughter, because I've learned to really appreciate how the other person in the conversation is showing up. And I've learned to put myself aside, and whatever I'm maybe trying to portray, whatever mask I have on, I've learned to put that aside and just be myself and be genuine
Mm.
and allow other people to be the same.
Wow.
Yeah,
Sounds transformational.
it really is. It's really been an interesting journey, and I know that the people around me have seen it.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier how what led you to NLP was really trying to understand why has HR as a function really flatlined in terms of impact and influence, I think were the words you used. What did your training, becoming a master practitioner of NLP really teach you about that?
Yeah, see, there are a couple of presuppositions of NLP that I bring up with the people I work with regularly. There are lots of them, but a couple that I think are particularly relevant in the HR space and in leadership space in general. One is every action has a positive intent.
Mm.
Whether you agree with it, whether it's even right, it starts out as a positive intent. When we look at somebody's behavior and we have trouble figuring out why are they doing that? Like, I don't understand. They're doing it for some kind of reason that's positive for themselves. If you can get out of your own way, most people are not. They don't get up in the morning and they say, what can I do to discredit Sally today? That's just really not on anybody else's mind. People in general are just trying to do the best they can with the resources they have.
Mm.
And quite often they end up making mistakes or they do things we don't agree with, but that isn't a reflection on us. So that's one of the big, big, big key takeaways, really, for anybody, for life in general. I think it really applies in HR. The other one is, it's called the law of requisite variety. And there's a lot of words that really basically mean that the person in any interaction with the most flexibility will have the most influence.
Well,
So think about it this way. This is a routine. I see this happen regularly, particularly with HR, and particularly because that is a function that's known for, we have all the answers, right? We have to have the answers. We know what's right. We know the law. We know the whatever. So quite frequently, I see HR leaders approaching a situation with a sort of a black or white, one right answer, my way or the highway kind of approach. And if you do this, you're backing yourself into a corner. Any kind of negotiation, quite frankly, any kind of a leadership situation, it just being a human being. If you're approaching a situation with there's just one solution only, one answer only, you're backing yourself into a corner, and you are going to have a hard time influencing the other person in the interaction because they're trying their best to have influence as well.
Yeah.
So that's one of the ways that flexibility allows an individual to have more influence. The other way is around communication style. So the ability to modulate your approach and your style, the words that you use, um, the language that you use, even your body language makes a big difference. So if you can, as an example, HR leader going into a meeting with the CFO and maybe trying to convince them to invest in leadership development. Well, saying that it's the right thing to do because our people need to feel invested in doesn't really mean much to the CFO. But if you're able to be flexible in the way you present that, talk about the impact to the bottom line, talk about the impact to what matters to that person, you're going to have more influence.
Wow.
So it's flexibility not only in thinking and ability to be influenced, but flexibility in the way you communicate.
And that feels particularly relevant now more than ever.
Very much, very much. I've been seeing it regularly. And it's something that, as I reflect on my career and I reflect on the times that I was able to have the most influence and the times that I really was more impactful were the times that I was able to step out of my own head. It's just get away from protecting myself or from trying to defend something, some idea of myself maybe that doesn't exist. Stepping away from that and allowing yourself to be a little bit vulnerable and a little flexible has been an amazing path for me. And I see many, many leaders coming to this conclusion as well. I'm seeing it pretty regularly out there in just various books that I read, podcasts I listen to, and so forth. As an example, John C. Maxwell just published a book, I want to say in the last couple of months, called The Return on Failure, and how to just sit down, take a look at the mistakes you've made, and understand what you did right, what you did wrong, what you could have learned. And if you do that, you will be able to get a return on that. So often we make a mistake and we just want to forget about it. We just sweep it under the rug. We hope nobody noticed, right? We pick ourselves up on the floor and say, nothing to see here, folks, trying to cover it up. But how unfortunate for ourselves and for the people around us that could also maybe learn something from that mistake. Literally just the other day, I was listening to a Mel Robbins podcast, and she had, I can't remember the woman's name, but a researcher from Harvard. And she has been researching this exact topic for years and years and I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but has basically determined that people who are more likely to demonstrate some level of vulnerability, some level of imperfection, some level of reality as a human being are 89% more likely to be trusted.
Wow.
89% more likely to be trusted than somebody that shows up with a perfect veneer sitting behind a plastic wall, unreachable.
Yeah. What makes that so hard to do, to be vulnerable? Even if the research is out there, we know logically why it helps build trust and stronger relationships and greater levels of influence. What is it that makes that so difficult to do, Sally?
We're protecting ourselves. And I mentioned earlier, we talked about neural pathways. Most of us, particularly those who are a bit perfectionist, somewhere along the lines started telling ourselves in our unconscious mind, playing a loop that says, yeah, I've got to be perfect. If I make a mistake, I don't want anybody to know about it. I have to hide that because it would affect my credibility if I made a mistake and people knew about it. So we either try our hardest not to make mistakes, which is not really the best idea, or we make mistakes and just cover them up so other people don't see them. What that does is it trains your brain to respond to failure or mistakes in a way that's negative. It trains your brain to immediately run to, okay, I need to cover this up. I need to protect myself by putting on a veneer and not letting people know about that.
So what can we do about that?
It's hard. It's very, very hard. But if you want to be real, if you want to show up as a leader, having real influence and allowing your people to really thrive and grow around you, first step, and this probably sounds kind of cliche, first step is really kind of realizing it and understanding that, yeah, you probably fall into that category. You probably fall into the I'm a perfectionist category, and that's okay. It probably got you where you are today. Probably got you where you are, but it's only going to get you so far. You're going to reach a lid on your leadership potential if you aren't able to step back and allow the people around you to step forward and thrive. You cannot be the one with all the answers anymore. Just can't. Your people will not thrive, and you're not going to be the best you can be. So, first of all, is understanding it and actually having a true desire for those around you to be able to step into some kind of spotlight, have the answers, learn and grow a little bit. You ever been in a situation where you're in a meeting and somebody says, oh, I have this idea, and rattles the idea off. And there's this, oh, yeah, I thought about that 3 weeks ago, right? The protectionist part of you wants to go to that and say, yep, I already thought about that. I already got a project plan for that, and that's what we're doing. Already on it. But the leader in you would step back and say, yeah, it's a great idea. Tell me more things. That gives that person an opportunity to step out there. So it's hard work. I compare it to literally pathways and neural superhighways in your brain. The ones we use on a regular basis get really, really, really well traveled and very, very comfortable for us to go down. I was telling you the story about when I was a little girl. My grandpa lived in Wisconsin. He was in the lumber business and had a sawmill basically on his property. There was a really, really, really lovely fishing hole. We used to get up, walk down the very, very well-worn, safe path down to the fishing hole. And as I was walking one day, I turned and I looked uphill, and I saw a building kind of tucked behind some trees. I didn't know what it was. And I thought, that is going to be really, really cool. I want to go see that. There was no path. So I had to create my own path. And I'm tripping over, tree branches and roots and stumps and skinning my knees and so forth, getting eaten alive by various crawling insects. But it was really a cool building when I got up there to take a look at it. So I brought my sister back the next day. We used the same, you could kind of see where I'd gone the day before. Day after that, I brought my cousin and my two cousins back. We used the same pathway. Next thing you know, there was a path. Going up there, and it was a lot easier. And that's exactly the way our brains work. It's not going to happen immediately. You have to, first of all, realize you're on a superhighway that you've created. Your brain's created for you. It's fine. It's perfectly fine. It's part of being a human being. We have those superhighways, and they're very comfortable. And when you get stressed out, you're more likely to want to go back to that superhighway, to that comfortable behavior of protecting myself. You have to do some intentional work to enable yourself to create that new pathway in your brain. And it's going to be, you're going to get tripped up, you're going to skin your knees, might get bit up by some mosquitoes, but eventually it'll get easier.
Can you share an example of a moment you realized you were on a superhighway somewhere you didn't want to be going and how you interrupted that pattern?
Yeah. There's a very, very particular moment. I want to say it's been 15 years ago by now. It was about, mid-level lead, probably a higher level leader in this organization. Great organization. with a really, really, really strong culture. And I used to get up every morning, run 5 miles, get back, take a shower, drive to the office. My little endorphin rush would hit as soon as I drove into the parking lot. And then I was on. I was performing to this level of expectation that this very strong culture expected. And I was getting in the shower, just reached in to flip on the shower, and I realized, I am on autopilot here. And I'm not being genuine about who I am. And I felt that there was something missing, and I was holding myself back intentionally. So I would tell you that in this particular case, I learned how to maybe work around that culture a little bit. But eventually I left the organization because very old, well-established, strong culture, they're not going to change just because of me. So I realized, if I'm going to thrive, I can't stay here. So I left.
What did that require of you in order to get off that superhighway?
Oh, it was scary. It's just such a well-paved superhighway with very, very clear path, if you will, toward if you want to move up within this organization, if you want to grow up the career, here's the way you act, here's how you do this. So it was very clear. So it took courage. It took a lot of courage to be able to realize that, even if I do that, I might be getting a super big paycheck and, all the other stuff that comes along with that. But I still won't be able to really be myself. I won't be able to show up the way I need to, and I won't thrive. So, yeah, I had to intentionally step away from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
If I'm listening and I want to take the first step and become more aware of the superhighways I'm on right now, what advice or encouragement would you have for me?
What a great question. If you're a leader, my first piece of advice would be to go talk to the people that work for you. Go talk to the people on your team and just ask them just for some feedback. Hey, if I could be a better leader for you in any way, what would that be? And if you're not a leader, go talk to your colleagues and just ask them, if I could be a better colleague for you, what would that be? What this does is it invites somebody to give you feedback. It invites somebody to provide observations for you. And people may not respond. If you're somebody that typically doesn't do that, people may be a little bit surprised. And they probably will answer something like, oh, no, you're great. Just keep doing what you're doing. There's got to be one little thing that I can do to help you be the best you can be. And what would that be? So by starting to ask a little bit for feedback, when it feels safe to you, because it definitely takes a risk to ask people for feedback, find somebody you feel relatively safe with and ask for some feedback. And then, you know what you do when you get the feedback?
Tell me.
You just say thank you. So often, and I am the poster child for this. Whenever I got feedback for quite some time, I found myself needing to explain myself because clearly that person doesn't know the whole story. They don't understand it all. And if I explained that to them, then they would understand it all. All that did was make me look defensive.
Sure.
Thank you very much for the feedback. I appreciate it. That means a lot.
Hmm.
Then you go sit down and you think about it. Privately, take yourself through that. Is that real? And it probably is real to a certain extent. At least it's real to that person.
Yeah.
Right? They're probably not making stuff up. They're probably not. And then decide what you want to do about it.
So intention is a piece of it. How about marrying that impact with intention? How do you work with leaders to really ensure that they can effectively close that gap, Sally?
The gap between intention and impact. What a great question. Because if you're not intentionally doing that, you could show up as being disingenuous or just clumsy, just in general clumsy. just if you sit down with your team and just tell them what you're working on,
Mm,
and if you're just upfront with them, they'll know and they'll understand, and they won't be asking questions about what is this? I don't understand. Where did this come from? And now you pave the way for yourself to move forward. You pave the way for people to give you feedback if you're not doing what you set out to do. And you pave the way for understanding. And when you're able to do that, you will have more impact, not only in your ability to make the change more quickly, but the people around you will see that and feel that. So your impact will be multiplied.
outstanding. I know you're a big proponent of engaging healthy cultures that help the humans behind the work really grow and thrive. You've seen it all. What are the characteristics of the healthiest cultures that you've seen out there?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. I really believe that culture is the invisible hand that shapes our nervous systems, quite frankly. And I know that sounds like a bit bold statement, um, but when you think about the kind of culture, like as an example, the kind of culture that I was working in, where mistakes really were not tolerated. Really, quite frankly, the person that made the biggest mistake was the one whose job probably got cut, at the end of the year. So you didn't want to make a mistake. So you protected yourself. You didn't take risks. You were kind of glad when somebody else made a mistake, quite frankly. So the ability to really collaborate with colleagues was limited. The ability to take risks and to innovate was extremely limited. And it was because you were worried about making a mistake. Um, so that just when you think about the impact that has on your nervous system and just really on your health, right? Your ability to just get up and just smile and laugh and be yourself and go about your day, got a massive, massive impact. So for people, I work with the senior leaders all the time. If you're a senior leader that is accountable for shaping culture and reinforcing culture, that's going to be the most important thing you do for your company. It's critical. The companies that are accepting of people kind of showing up as who they are the ones that thrive, are the ones that are most successful.
Mm. Why do you think that is?
I literally was just reading some research on learning organizations and companies that have enabled a culture of continuous learning. And one of the key undercurrents or themes with those companies is the idea of distributed leadership.
Interesting.
So the ability of leaders to delegate well, to give people authority and opportunities to learn and grow, and again, make their own mistakes. Again, if you can go back to getting the return from your mistakes, the return from your failures, if you do that well, you're going to grow exponentially. Your company's going to grow exponentially. There's science behind that. There's science. People who are free to learn from their mistakes and are free to grow will grow farther.
So many of us have been parts of workplace environments that I love how you talk about culture really impacts the central nervous system. How have you gone about, and this is making some assumptions, but how would you encourage people to go about healing from their central nervous system from some cultures that may have done some damage?
First of all, again, is realizing it and understanding where that came from, and giving yourself the freedom, I think, to accept who you are and accept the mistakes that you've made, accept your own imperfections. That's first. It takes time. It really takes time. I've worked in a couple of very toxic cultures. And I would say it took a couple of years to finally get off that sort of fight or flight thing that I was feeling on a regular basis. Even though I was working in a culture that was amazing, it took me a couple of years to finally settle down. So doing all the things that you should do to take care of your central nervous system, sleeping, taking care of your health, moving, talking with people, being real with people. Nothing at all beats a good therapy session. And in fact, I've seen more and more and more people reaching out for coaching because I, I think we're starting to get it. I think we're starting to get this as a society and as human beings. And yeah, you have more and more people reaching out for coaching. So it's going to be hard to do that alone. If you've been through a really toxic culture, hard to get over that by yourself. Need some help.
In what ways has coaching influenced your own trajectory, Sally?
There's something really humbling about coaching people. Um, the imposter syndrome is such a widely known thing. And there are many, many times when I sit down to coach somebody and I find that imposter syndrome creeping in a little bit. Like, who am I to coach this person? Look at what this person's done in their career. Look at, whoever they are. So it's humbling when you realize that, okay, I'm not a perfect person either, but I probably have something that can help this person out. And they probably have something that can help me out too. I'm going to learn something. So that ability to interact with people, to learn and exchange ideas, and exchange vulnerabilities has been really amazing.
So you've talked about the importance of being open as a leader, both that you're human and make mistakes and also to the mistakes of those around you. Can you share an example, Sally, of how that has played a role in your own life?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's our ability to sometimes laugh at ourselves that is so healthy. And in fact, I'm writing a book called "Learn from My Mistakes," and I'm starting with the career edition. And I'll probably go on to relationship edition and financial edition. There's lots to learn from. I had was in a newer CHRO role as head of HR, and had decided that I was going to take on an HR transformation. So this is a pretty common buzzword in the HR space, but basically it's about helping an HR team going from that sort of transactional tactical work to more strategic work for the organization. Almost everybody's trying to do it. Not that many companies have been able to get there, as I mentioned before, with some of the data that's out there. So I set out and I was gonna transform this HR department. And I thought, well, they are gonna just love this. Who wouldn't want that? This HR team literally was in the file room. I mean, and that's not just a metaphor for how they were acting. They literally spent most of their time in the file room. And I thought, well, they're gonna love me. Who wouldn't want to be liberated from the file room? Who wouldn't want to be? And the leaders of these buildings that they worked in, I thought, well, they're gonna love me too because they are going to want strategic HR. They're going to want an HR leader that's able to understand their business. So they're going to love me too. Well, not enough of them did, quite frankly. Quite frankly, it did not go very well. And I realized it was because I didn't take time to understand it from their point of view. I didn't take time when I did finally go down to the file room and find out what was the attraction down here.
Yeah.
They were like doing an I-9 audit or something, right? Making sure all the boxes were checked. But they were safe. They were safe.
Wow.
Nobody was arguing with them in the file room.
Yeah.
If you are in HR and you step out and you want to go have a conversation with somebody about culture or leadership effectiveness or employee engagement, whatever it is, you name it, you're going to have other opinions. Other people will have a point of view about the work you're doing.
Yeah.
Again, we feel like we need to be the expert. We need to protect ourselves. And that's what was going on with that team. That's also what was going on with the leaders in those buildings. They didn't necessarily want, somebody in their business asking them questions. They wanted somebody to just plan the pizza parties. And here I was, I came in there on my, hey, this is what we're going to do. I know how to be strategic HR. I'm going to, lead all of you guys to this. Finally, when I realized that this was about some people who were afraid to take that next step and they were afraid to be vulnerable, I started just instinctively giving them some stories about some things I'd learned the hard way in the past.
Wow.
And I literally went in the file room. I was doing the I-9 audit with them, and I realized, and then I just started telling them some stories about like my past HR career and just some things that I had done, some things I'd realized about how I was approaching the job wrong, and how ultimately I realized that if I show up and act as a strategic business partner, I'm going to be more effective. So I had a kind of a neat method to what I was telling them, but I got more accomplished in that one conversation where I was telling them, showing them where I made mistakes in the past and what I learned from them. I did more in that conversation than I could have done in a month of doing speeches about why this is important.
Outstanding. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
We've covered a lot of ground here today.
Yeah.
If you were to speak to listeners who are navigating an ever-changing world at the speed of light, what one area would you encourage them to focus on this next week, Sally?
Everybody's heard of Arnold Palmer, right? You ever heard of Arnold Palmer? So he's a famous golfer for anybody who's living under a rock out there that doesn't know. He is known for saying, the game of golf is played in the 6 inches between your ears. And my husband's a golf professional, does teaching. So he used to tell me that all the time because I have a really, really good swing. I have a really pretty swing. But half the time I get out on the tee and I'm, shaking it, just something crazy. So my husband used to tell me that all the time. Oh, still does. It's right in here, Sally. It's right in here. And as I've been applying all these things that I've been learning the last couple of years, I've realized that it's not just golf that's a game of inches. It's life that's a game of inches. And it's played in these 6 inches here between your ears. So the advice I have is realize that, figure out it's not so much about what you do, it's more about how you do it. And then go ask for some feedback.
That was fantastic. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for joining me. Asking me to join you.
Absolutely. This has been a great conversation, Sally. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us. Join us next week for another episode of Leadership Matters. Thanks for joining us for today's episode of Leadership Matters. If today's episode resonated with you, would you do me a favor and share it with someone you care about? To learn more about the work the Bailey Group is doing in the world, check us out at thebaileygroup.com or follow us over on LinkedIn. We love sharing useful articles, helpful resources, and valuable tools to help you expand your leadership capacity. Like and subscribe, and join us next time for more honest conversations.